Hello and welcome to the MindSea podcast series, Moving Digital Health. Our guest today is Alexis Moses, Senior Creative Engineer at FCB Health. Thanks for joining us today, Alexis.
Hey, great to be here, Reuben. I'm really excited.
Awesome. So I was wanting to start, could you briefly describe your background and role at FCB Health?
Yeah, sure. Just to kind of summarize my career as a creative technologist, I'll start kind of where I started before I entered into the market, which was I was a teacher at Harlem Children's Zone as a teaching artist, where I taught kids journalism and as well as video game development and programming. And then from there, I moved into the private sector where I worked at 360i for 4.5 years. And I was a creative technologist, working on all types of emerging technologies. And then I graduated to FCB Health, where it was where, of course, there's we focus on pharmaceuticals and marketing in that market. What's really great about being a creative engineer and what we do is that we bring some clarity and creative opportunities with technologies in terms of campaigns, as well as how technology can solve problems specifically for patients or healthcare providers. And we do this all probably with a smile on our face, that even though in a world where it's probably grim, where you're dealing with sickness as the core issue of the problems you're trying to solve. But since we are a function of the creative department, we kind of get a chance to think outside of the box on how to solve these solutions with all these emerging technologies, even if it's regarding starting from robots to apps to chatbots to all various technologies. And if you're a geek like my department as a whole, you're gonna have a lot of fun and a lot of growth that comes with the job.
Yeah, it really does sound like a really interesting and fun role. So tell me about some of the specific technologies that you're working with right now.
All right, sure. I'm going to go down with one of my favorites too, man. I'm gonna break down the technologies that are free, because we do a lot of we research a lot of technologies and we play with a lot of technologies. But I think I'm going to come out from the perspective of technologies that I think are going to be highly effective, and technologies that are just really cool, because sky's the limit in my mind. So the first right now is conversational technologies like chatbots, Alexa. Mm-hmm. Any of those things that deal with conversational user interfaces. I really enjoy those, and I've been working with that technology for a while, because even at 360i we did some campaigns for HBO, Westworld. We've done some for Roto-Rooter, and really thinking outside the box. But at that time, the technology was a little earlier, and it was really self-contained in terms of, hey, you can ask a question, receive an answer. You can make a query and receive an answer from that particular query. But what we can do with the technologies now, we can actually integrate it into other technologies. So having a chatbot that can launch games, or a chatbot that has experiences that deal with quizzes, or chatbots that feel like they're everywhere and always have presence in terms of answering a question. So chatbots are really chatbots, and I should say conversational UIs, really I think one of the big untapped and quickly growing technologies. I would say the second technology that we're really fond of is Webgl, where we're actually doing a lot of 3D graphics in the browser. I think one of the most important aspects of the technology is that it integrates easily. It's like you go to a website and then you have this incredible experience. There's no downloads or installations. It's something that feels like a natural progression of the web. And what you can do with that's kind of different than just having an ordinary 2D canvas is we can make these experiences that are extremely more engaging by making these virtual worlds. So if we're doing an MOA for for a client, you can actually, instead of just saying a still image or just a video, you can actually interact with the MOA, the molecular structures, or the drug itself, and we can easily gamify it. And it just all works. So there's these technologies that are built behind making these experiences. One of our fallback technologies is something called Play Canvas, which is a Webgl game engine. It's just beautiful. So we can do quick prototyping and make any experience that we want. So it's kind of like a video game, video games you can make specifically for this particular market. But I don't really like to say video games. It kind of scares people away. It's like, I don't want to make our pharmaceutical and company look like we're making light of the situation. No, but it's really just these extremely interactive experiences that just work well and can really engage any user. I think deeper than the previous technologies.
Wow, that's really really interesting. How do you solve the problem with conversational UI of kind of out of sight, out of mind, where sometimes like the user has to know the right question to ask to interact with that experience? Is there ways that you coach or kind of guide them to be able to get started with that?
No, that's a great question too, because I think the consensus is that when someone hears about a chatbot or any conversational UI, is that you can ask it anything and then go anywhere with it, right? But in actuality, it's a very guided and targeted experience. So we're always guiding the user on the next logical step in the experience, or it could be something where we actually add a visual aspect to it. So we kind of have buttons and images and video that kind of goes along with the chatbot experience as well. So it's not something that we leave an open-ended area for where the user can go. Not saying that it doesn't include that. We do want the conversations to feel as natural as possible, but we always want to make sure that this experience is guided and the chatbot is given feedback of and suggestions of what is going to help the user the most. And that all comes down to that conversational design and the manuscript that we build to make these experiences happen. So collaborating with the copy department and strategy is like a big aspect of that, of understanding what the user is looking for in the first place. And then from there, just taking those ideas and implementing them to make sure the user is never lost or stuck and getting the answers that they need. And I would also like to add that the technology is also really great for bringing that feedback to improve for the future. Pretty easy to update a lot of experiences. So if a user is asking a particular question and at the current time we don't have an answer for it, it's like, okay, we get that feedback and then, feed the AI or machine learning algorithm, or I would just like to say the conversational intelligence of how to handle that particular situation for the next time. So young technologies still growing, but we can have quick turnarounds to make sure that the experience improves over time. But I think we do a pretty good job of making sure that we cover all our bases in the first experience.
Interesting. And can conversational UI be more accessible for some people who might have like motor skill challenges or visual impairments?
Absolutely. I think that's what's so beautiful about the technology. It's just another avenue. It's not made to replace a website. It's not made to replace human agents as either, right? It's just another option, and specifically for people that might have accessibility issues. So if you're instead of saying, hey, it's going to be hard for me to call someone up. If everything's all attached into my Alexa, I can simply say, Alexa, open XYZ, and then I'm going to get an answer pretty quickly back with very little friction. I think that's a very, very powerful tool. And even when it comes to people with ocular issues, that turning that chatbot into something that's just completely orated can really help out. But I would definitely not being transparent if I would say that it is an option to sometimes we might have to lead someone back to an experience where you have to use visuals. And that's where chatbots actually really excel, about where we can have someone even talk to a chatbot or type into a chatbot. And usually a chatbot has very little real estate. It's in the corner. You have all this text, and it works well. But what happens if you need to show a bigger, like a video or MOA or really take someone to a part of a website that might need a lot more real estate space except for this chatbot that's in the corner. So through that particular integration, we can be smart enough to say, hey, let's just switch you over to this, and the chatbot can control that parent page and get the user to have that experience that's outside of the chatbot while the chatbot's still being present. So it's about designing a flow that can really meet everyone's needs in order for them to find the solutions they were initially looking for.
Cool. And maybe tell me a little bit more about GL as well, and how that can apply to a digital health context.
Oh, absolutely. So Webgl, I think the power behind Webgl are two things. One, it's education. You're just going to get a deeper education because the experience is a lot more interactive, and therefore there's a lot more design space. It's a lot more creative space. So if we want someone to really get to the core of an experience and to understand an experience, we're going to increase that interactivity. And the best way to remember something is to make something as interactive as possible, and getting that feedback directly. So I believe 3D does a great job of doing that. So if you're thinking about it's almost the equivalent of playing a video game where you get into a game and the more you play it, and depending on how well designed it is, it just feels like a natural event that, or I would say, I don't want to use the word event. I would say, let's say a natural experience or interactivity that is naturally going to educate you almost without you knowing you're being educated, because it just feels maybe a little fun, or just maybe or maybe it strikes or it feeds your curiosity, because of maybe the unexpected things that you can do inside of it, especially traversing these interactive worlds. And that's attached to the second part, which is that a lot of these experiences don't have to feel clinical. Because the world is like the limit is like extremely the limit in terms of creativity. It's it varies so much inside of the 3D space, especially when you're getting real time, when you're getting that real time feedback back to the user. So for example, if I, in order to make something feel a bit more to feel a bit more personal, we can follow around a digital avatar, and that digital avatar, and really see how his life is like, and click around in that experience of clicking on stakeholders in his life that are also represented by digital avatars, and really get an experience back of through extended media such as video and images, and then say, hey, but what's going on in his body, and like zoom inside of his body and see what's happening at that moment in time. So that's of course just like an idea out of a million variations that can come up creatively, that not only raises the emotional intelligence of the user, but also that the intelligence in terms of the science itself. And I think Webgl does a great. It gives us the tools to create those experiences that I think work well in 2D as well. If you were doing a flat surface, but it's not only just about saying, hey, let's just keep it 2D, but it's about evolving, sometimes being unexpected. And I think Webgl is just the natural extension, and almost kind of like the new hotness that we have to learn, that's always going to grab the attention of the user in a different, unexpected way. The bigger the canvas, the bigger the picture. So, and I think Webgl is the natural extension of these web experiences.
Cool. So where do you go to keep up with emerging technology and, ideas to, inspire you for these, digital health solutions?
That's a great question as well. A lot of times it's weird. sometimes I'll just be in LinkedIn, and next thing you know, someone's just posting about a new technology. Or sometimes I'm on VentureBeat, maybe TechCrunch. One of my favorite podcast video, I would say YouTube series, is 2-Minute Papers. That is it's a great. I've learned a lot about technologies and in terms of really emerging technologies that probably won't be available for us in maybe 3 to 5 years in terms of the primary market that we exist in. Like, those technologies are off, but it inspires us to look at what we can do with technologies, to look forward to, and how and where those technologies currently are. So they kind of spark our imagination, our curiosity to investigate. And definitely last but not least, but sometimes it's just looking at contemporary technology and just looking at it in a different perspective that inspires us, because an old technology is not necessarily, it might be obsolete in its functionality, but it's not particularly obsolete in its cultural relevance. So a lot of times as creative engineers, we want to lean also on that creative part and understand what certain technologies mean to our users, what they mean to our stakeholders, and mean to our clients. And sometimes there's value in that. So even looking at Webgl, a big portion of understanding design. I'm still a little bit of a gamer at heart. Unfortunately, I'm older, so I don't get the time to really put in there. But I'll look back and say, look at the way they're implementing these user interfaces. Look at the technologies that they have that are communicating with the internet. Look at how they're making these experience multiplayer and multi-user. All that stuff is all of those features can be integrated in the technologies that we're using, and they're becoming commonplace. And there's tools that are supporting the development of this that makes it much easier than it was 10 years ago, where you needed a gigantic team of maybe 50 people to get a multiplayer experience working. Now you probably don't need as many, maybe 2 or 3. But even just using one person to get the whole infrastructure up, but probably need more than one just to do the testing, of course. But it's about the contemporary technologies that are very influential, because things that might exist in one market, it's totally new to another market. And I feel that way when it comes to the market of medicine. Sometimes it's like, hey, what is this? This feels so new. What is this? I'm like, yeah, it's been out for 5 years, but it's new. And now that we're implementing it in its particular context, it feels fresh. It feels new. And there's new ideas and creative ideas that are using these technologies for these particular purposes. And therefore, it's making that technology relevant and more importantly, very effective.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, because you see a lot of the education technology, geared towards kids in schools these days, very much comes from gaming, right? It was, those lessons learned from the gaming industry of, that they're using to help kind of, make learning fun and keep kids engaged, especially, when they're remote. But a lot of that translates to the healthcare setting, where, you are trying to educate, a patient, about their condition, or, about how to follow their prescription properly. And you can use those, same techniques, to make it feel, more digestible and more interactive, so they have a better chance of, absorbing and retaining that information than just reading a pamphlet.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny that you said pamphlet too, because one of the technologies I'm always interested in, I love, is actually print. And everyone's like, print. and my team is great, and we love taking those dives in things that don't seem like technology can be infused in it. And so I'm obsessed with print, because I'm just like, hey, you know what? Let's kind of deck out some tech. Let's deck out some print. And so we're using technologies as like NFC, near field communication, where we're embedding these chips inside of print, understanding how to use AR inside of print, and then making the structure of the print even more interactive, like turning it into a pop-up book or infusing it with conductive ink. So when you actually touch the print or a print piece or a poster, it actually gives a response. So I always tell everyone, don't shy away from something that seems like it's obsolete. The opportunity is there to evolve that. And there isn't the human condition it's really mostly about reinventing something. It's not really about making it disappear. There might not be any blockbusters, but we still watch movies, right? So it's like,
yeah. And to your point before, like you said, kind of meeting the patient, where they are, right? If it's someone who's more comfortable with the print medium, maybe that is the right medium for that audience and that specific context and that information, right? So I'm wondering if have you played around with gestural technology as well, where a lot of people think there's a lot of future in that, because you don't have to touch anything and you can interact with the screen just with your gestures.
Oh, absolutely. We're really fond of Ultraleap, where you can use your natural hand gestures. And there's also technologies that of course, since we're going through a pandemic, we're as society, we're a little bit more aware of things that we're touching and things that we don't want to touch. But technology that shift the interface from the screen to your own personal device, which I believe that company's called touch free. So you get a chance to turn your phone into the device to control a screen. I think they're all very interesting, but even if you go back to like technologies that were out before, like if you remember the Microsoft Kinect, we're using your whole body to control these particular experiences. And I guess ultimately these technologies are to make people feel comfortable. And I find those technologies to be very effective in that context. But I also feel that I try not to focus so much on the fact that people don't want to touch things, because people ultimately want to touch things. People want connection. All right. So even though we might be planning for pandemic types of experiences currently, just to feed that mental and that anxiety of everyone's like, oh, I don't want to touch this, but our primary focus is also just to say, hey, you know what, this is going to be temporary, because we're human beings, we're social. I took my daughter to a wrestling match last night, and it was pretty packed, but we had a great time, and it was really about that social experience. And so I'm looking around, I'm seeing that people in general want to have these experiences that make them feel safe, but we still want to be around everyone. We still kind of want to touch each other, give each other high fives, and so I try not to hold that technology to the standard of saying, hey, this is how we just want to make sure no one's touching anyone else, right? And it might make clients feel a little safer, maybe the user at the moment feel a little safer, but to put it in that type of box can might kind of suffocate the thinking in terms of what you can really do with these technologies, and how far we can take it to make sure this is the best experience we can make.
Yeah, and that's really insightful, because although technology changes really fast and there's always something like new and exciting coming out, people don't change that fast. And, human nature is still human nature, and, we are adaptable, but, there's basic, principles that we have to live by. They're, never going to change. And it's, how to adapt the technology to meet people, where they are too. So I know you recently attended the Propelify conference. Anything stand out there, or, surprised or excited you?
Oh yeah, sure. There were a couple of vendors that I thought was really cool. One was Wonder, which is a service where they use food trucks to deliver meals to to customers. But the great thing is that the chef is actually on the bus, so they cook it freshly in front of your house. So these are just freshly made meals that reflect particular restaurants that they have partnerships with. So you're getting like a great experience that is kind of coordinated by multiple technologies that we're probably kind of aware of. But I just find it really fascinating that they're really freshly making the food outside of your house. It sounds so simple, but I find that the thought of making a business around that particular functionality it's really incredible. Another one was called Mindset, and they kind of have these meditation booths that are made for conferences. And what's really cool is that it can be infused with other technologies. So you can add voice inside of it, audio, and just put anything inside of it. And it's just another simple technology. I'm just attracted to simple things sometimes. Like the great big things are emerging technologies I never heard of, but pretty exciting. But something that's as simple as saying, hey, you're in this busy conference and we have this little booth for you to take a breather, and then we can make these custom experiences inside of it. I think those are just really awesome. So Mindset was pretty cool. Not so high on the tech, but I think the fact that you can infuse technology in it inside of this physical small booth, I think it's just really exciting. Another company was Bowery Farms. And they basically reimagine how we can sustain a farm in terms of crops, and using all types of technologies with greenhouses, and using technology to understand how the product needs to be cultivated in terms of watering and getting enough sunlight in the season that it's created. So I think those are really interesting technologies, and they use a lot of machine learning to understand that as well. So just even having using image recognition to say, yep, that's about right. Just this I'm oversimplifying, of course, but I think companies that are using these technologies to make life easier and to give healthier choices, that's exciting to me. I think the why a technology exists to make the world better is something that I'm always going to be pretty attracted to. And the last thing I would say is there was a company called Blockcube that uses blockchain technology for trials. That was pretty interesting. And just to be honest, I was working with one of my associates, and we were looking at Blockcube, and we were like, man, the possibilities are so wide. It's like I fully don't even grasp every single thing that it can do, but I know that it can do a lot, because currently they're using it for regulatory issues, and also reducing fraud within the trial the trial sector. And I'm like, wow, that's like really interesting to have that. I think it's varied and maybe even a little complex. But to see that the health market are getting these new and imaginative and innovative technologies and really exploring within it, it's an exciting time. And just for old geek's sake, there's a company called Exo Volar, which has a flight suit. I just think that was cool. I thought that was cool.
That does sound awesome.
Yes, indeed. And what's even better is, like, even taking a step back, it's just like how Amazon right now, they're currently having drones fly products to customers. I can see how an exosuit where someone can fly around like Iron Man and deliver a package, or maybe even save someone's life from a burning building. And I know it sounds so science fiction, it sounds so out of this world, but but we're thinking about it. And in order for something in order for something to eventually come true, we have to play in that space. So it was just exciting to see that at Propellify. Unfortunately, they didn't have a live demo, but hopefully I can see this in real person and in real life at one point or another.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's just give all the doctors, flight suits so they can, fly around and give them superpowers to help solve our healthcare crisis here.
Absolutely.
With all these new technologies you're seeing, what do you think the main barriers are to organizations moving ahead with them?
Um, I will say this is it's usually proof that they're effective. I think we do a lot of presenting technologies and not to make us seem glorious, but a lot of times when we are presenting these technologies, it's great to see everyone's eyes widen up because it's like, I never knew this was possible. But the second part to that experience is does this work? What are the numbers on this? Will we get enough hits? Will we get enough? Or will we make sure that we're going to make enough impressions with this technology? And a hard part of it is that sometimes implementing that technology in this particular way, you might be one of the first to market. So it's not a lot of analytics on the effectiveness on these particular strategies and implementing these technologies. So that's probably the biggest part of it. So it takes a bit of a intrepidness to adopt these technologies and say, hey, we're going to give this a try. So I think that's really the biggest roadblock. And of course, we're also worried about medical legal review as well, but it's not as big as saying, hey, this looks cool, but is it really effective? And sometimes the biggest challenge is to get them to see past that and say, hey, we want to inspire, but also celebrate how modular these technologies are. That's kind of a big part of our philosophy, is that it's like, hey, this technology does X, Y, and Z, but that's just the start of it. So if taking conversational UI back into effect is like, hey, you can start off with a chatbot, but that easily integrates into a voice, so you can exist on the Alexa or Google Assistant market, or that we can actually make you a digital avatar using a platform called Soul Machines, where you can actually have a digitized rep actually speak to your brand, and just saying, hey, this is where it starts, but this is where it's going to go. And a lot of these technologies are really about that. And sometimes it's hard to, I wouldn't say it's hard, but I would say it's a challenge to make sure that we can present those opportunities to clients, and hopefully they really get excited about it and start believing in it and say, yeah, this is going to lead us in the right direction. I would say that in itself is the most difficult.
Yeah. So maybe walk me through the process of, once you've pitched the idea and everyone's eyes light up and they're like, yes, we're on board, but we need to see some sort of evidence or proof that this is going to work. How do you then move into, kind of the prototyping or beta phase in a small way before you, do the entire thing?
Oh, absolutely. Our team, we try to pride ourselves on being as agile as possible. So the best way to have someone believe in something is for them to actually experience it. So our team is a little bit unapologetic in terms of creating things. So while we're in that creative, brainstorm, just even in the brainstorming process, we're just saying, hey, this is cool, and this is an opportunity to use this technology. So we'll go back to our lab. Right now, our virtual labs, everyone's lab is their home, but we'll collaborate and build a prototype right then and there at the brainstorming point of development, and which is extremely early. But we have a belief that, hey, if we're using these technologies, we're doing two major things. One, we're getting a deeper understanding for ourselves and for our clients. And number two, we're actually templating the technologies, because for every time that we find an interest, or maybe this is a possible solution, we're just going back into our bag of tricks of things that we've learned about technologies, and evolving it and customizing it directly for that particular client to get them to envision and to play. And I think that's a big part of making sure that our client teams also adopt it. Excuse me. And that is because we don't want, if the client team doesn't believe in it, the other creatives, then the client won't believe in it as well. So it's about educating our teams, as well as making sure that when the client plays with it, they're just going, oh, I see now. And I need no further explanation. And that's the space we're always trying to get to. So our job of educating people about technology and showing its effectiveness, it goes hand in hand, just strictly with education, and then play. Right? We just want them to play with these technologies to get a chance to really understand it. And I usually would say it's almost as simple as that.
And so you would, have access to the users, or to test out the solution with them during the process or before launch, or?
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. So we're not, our team isn't particularly a production team. So what we do is when we create these experiences and have clients play around with the experience, and our creative teams play around with these experiences. Our whole goal is to say, hey, not only is this something that we can make, what we know can be done, but we're looking for those partners that can actually bring it to real life. Our team, we're not 100% into production. We're primarily not in production, but we do produce conversational experiences. But when it comes to something like, let's say it's Webgl, we'll quickly create like a video game prototype for a client, and then we'll say, hey, now that this is something that's done, and we kind of pushed it along very fast, we can hand it off to our production team, and they can kind of hit the ground running. So it's like, hey, we had to do a particular simulator for something, but now we don't have to kind of waste our time reevaluating the technologies and vetting the technology. As a matter of fact, we're starting from a place that reflects what the client wants initially, and they can just kind of move along with it. And I think that's where a lot of the testing takes place. And I would also say that our client teams and our account teams, they play with the technologies a lot as well, because we want to give them that particular playground to understand, because no one can read everyone's mind. It's about making those corrections right on the fly, and having that dialogue. So it's like, oh, this character looks a little crazy, and can we get from point A to point B easier? Is this interface is this interface confusing? Is it, so it's just like, okay, cool. And then making those changes as quick as possible, to make sure that we can get to a place that feels like it's going to be effective, and a great experience, and kind of meet the needs and the targets that we hope that it will.
Cool. So what are you most excited about in digital healthcare, looking ahead to the next 5 years, let's say?
Wow. I would definitely say, still conversational marketing. I think that's going to be adapted a whole lot. It's going to be adopted at a greater level. I would also say robotics. Robotics is big. I think robotics is big. I know everyone's afraid about Skynet and the Terminator type of aspects, because it's so nebulous in terms of the technology, and a lot of we've been entertained to think that computers and artificial intelligence is eventually going to turn on us, but that's not particularly the case. But it's really about going back to the core experience of these technologies making life a whole lot easier. And robotics is going to do that for many, especially in a world where I would say culturally, we're becoming a lot more independent, and people are trying to find solutions to make their lives better. So as you know, we have a growing aging population, and not being able to have other individuals help out with that, or fill those particular jobs to help someone that's going to need some type of assistance. Robotics is kind of going to fulfill that demand. I would also say I would also say machine learning, of course, is just going to be big, and I think that's infused into the previous technologies I talked about. But it's really about identifying something in particular. I don't know what those particular challenges are right now that are going to be in 5 years, but currently it's about making life easier to get to answers, because machine learning is really mostly about getting a result, but training a computer to understand how to get to that result, and making sure that result is correct in nature, right? At the end of the day, you can't just take anything at face value and say, hey, yeah, that's right, and go X, Y, and Z. So it takes a lot of investment to make sure that a computer is going to be accurate as close to 100% of the time as it can be. But I believe that we'll get there, and it's going to change our lives. And it's going to change the lives of the world in general, in terms of our health, in terms of just in terms of the utility, in terms of our utility and just being happy. And technology is going to kind of fulfill that. Those technologies, I think, are going to fulfill that.
Cool. Well, yeah, there certainly is a ton of potential. And yeah, who knows what's going to come next. I did see a project that really intrigued me, the Adapt Toys project on your website. Maybe could you tell me about that one a little bit?
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, that was at 360i. I guess you're talking about my personal website. Yeah, thank you for checking it out.
I was checking you out. I was doing my research.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was a great project. A very beautiful project, and basically we partnered with the Christopher Reeve and Dana Foundation, where our goal was to understand that people that had limited mobility, they themselves deserve to play, right? They need to have as many opportunities for normalcy as anyone else that might not be facing those particular challenges. So we said, hey, why don't we make some toys that are used for people with limited mobility? Just to rewind back a little bit, this was an idea from our creative team, and they came to us in the creative technology department to see if we can have some solutions. So at first we were thinking about just reading someone's mind, just simply by putting on like a wave cap and then using technologies to control a remote control car. And that didn't work so well. I don't think that technology is quite there yet, where mind control is the most effective and dependable. So we settled on using voice technology, where we had a voice baseball pitcher, where someone could say pop up or pitch, and then it would throw out a particular pitch. So that was really cool. And then we had a sip and puff system with a gyroscope and accelerometer in it, where you can blow to make a remote control car go forward, you suck in to make it go back, and then you can control it by tilting your head left and right. And I think it was a very beautiful and effective project in terms of just bringing eyes to the issue, right? And giving those people opportunities to gain a part of their lives that they used to have, or maybe to some instances that they've never had. And so I think Adapt Toys is definitely, I think, a model that a lot of brands and clients should follow if they're going to contribute back to society as well. I always highly recommend if there is a brand to probably invest a little bit of time to that's outside of your primary product to make the lives of everyone else better. And I think Adapt Toys was a project that reflected that notion.
Yeah, really cool. You talked about like some of the ideas coming from the creative team or brainstorming sessions. Are there any ideas that have come to like, bubbled up from, patients or end users and kind of, got through to your team? And then you said, hey, we know how to, put together the technology to make that happen.
Yes. And I think our strategy teams, they do a lot of research on patients and patient experiences. So we're always being fed that information to say, okay, they have a problem. We have to come up with a solution using technology. And that is a very powerful. It's definitely a very powerful to kind of have that connection, to kind of hear the voice of the voice that really matters, right? It is. There are patients. They're the patients, and the patients are really why why anyone would make any particular type of product to help someone. So I think the big challenge usually is trying to narrow down if the technology we come up with and brainstorm is going to be effective for the patient. So I really wish that pipeline was a little bit more seamless in terms of, hey, we created something, why don't you test it out, right? And I think that's where we're going as well. I think we'll eventually get there where it's a point where engineering and understanding someone's issue will be a lot more interconnected. But currently we are taking that experience of understanding what a patient is going through and brainstorming and saying, here, this technology might fit here, this technology might fit there. And sometimes it feels a little bit more simple because we have solutions that exist on the market that they just might not know about. This, being that the health industry might not be aware that something exists. And then there's that perspective of like, maybe we have to create something from scratch, like just by using our own like imaginative, basically our own imaginations to say, hey, maybe we can create something that's not on the market and bring it to life. And also hopefully it'll be relevant.
So thank you, Alexis. It's been really great chatting with you. And thanks for sharing your experiences and some really cool thoughts and conversations today. So look forward to chatting with you again soon. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the MindSea newsletter to get notified about future episodes. Thanks a lot.